Hello, everyone. Welcome to Enlightened Living. Why do I laugh every time I say the intro? Because
It's funny.
we don't really have a set intro, basically. But anyway, so we're continuing on with the alien interview discussion. So, again, the book is a PDF book. It's called Alien Interview, based on personal notes and interview transcriptions provided by Matilda O'Donnell McElroy. Editing and supplemental footnotes by Lawrence R. Spencer, author of The Oz Factor. And you can find this if you Google search the abridged version of this is called Prison Planet. You can find it on YouTube. Okay. So where were we? Here, I'll let you take it. There's some notes.
Okay. So kind of recapping everything is bringing it back again, talking about alien encounter, all the things that people have heard about things. This bringing up some of the things that about encounters that have been kind of hidden and forgotten about. If this is true. But the main thing is sometimes the truth is more interesting than you know.
Strangers in Fiction.
Yeah, it's strangers in fiction. Yeah. So it's can't easily just dismiss it right away. But the thing is looking deeper into anything, even something as simple as this, or something like that, people usually have like some sort of cult following to, or anything like that. It's like there is truth in everything. You got to find out what the truth is and what is not.
And here's a little bit more about her ranking and stuff that she writes in her personal notes here. This is why it rings true to me, this whole document. But I mean, I don't know. But basically, when she talks about how she was enlisted in the U.S. Women's Army Air Force Medical Corps, which was a part of the U.S. Army back then. She was assigned to the 509th Bomb Group as a flight nurse at the time of the incident. They said when they got news of the crash, Mr. Cavett, the counterintelligence officer, to the crash site. She accompanied him as the driver of his vehicle, and also to render any emergency medical assistance to any survivors if necessary. She says, therefore, I briefly witnessed the wreckage of an alien spacecraft, as well as the remains of the several alien personnel aboard the craft who were already dead. When we arrived, I learned that one of the personnel on the board of the craft had survived the crash and was conscious and apparently uninjured. The conscious alien was similar in appearance, but not the same as the others. None of the other personnel present could communicate with the survivor, as the being did not communicate verbally or by any recognizable signs. However, while I examined the patient for injuries, I immediately detected and understood that the alien being was attempting to communicate with me by mental images or telepathic thought, which projected directly from the mind of the being. She said she immediately reported this to Mr. Cavett, as no other person present could perceive these thoughts. When the alien seemed able and willing to communicate with me, it was decided, after a brief consultation with the senior officer, that I would accompany the surviving alien back to the base. This was partly due to the fact that I was a nurse and could attend to the physical needs of the alien, as well as serve as a non-threatening communicator and companion. She says, after all, I was the only woman at the site, and the only one who was not armed. I was therefore assigned permanently to serve as a companion of the alien at all times. She says her duty was to communicate with and interview the alien, to make a complete report of all that was discovered to the command authorities. She says, subsequently, I was supplied with the specific list of questions provided to me by military and non-military personnel, which I was to interpret for the alien and record the responses to questions provided. So that's kind of more. When she says she got a pay grade, she was given a promotion in rank to senior master sergeant to improve her security rating, and her pay grade went up. And then what else did she put here? This is important to point out. She was never left entirely alone with the alien. There's always military personnel on the other side of or in the room, or on the other side of the glass, or somewhere basically where they could see her. This whole thing lasted about 6 weeks. Okay, so that's just a little bit more of the background part of it.
And as she's figuring out more of the information, it's like, yeah, it's kind of a standard procedure. It's like, I know back then the higher your security clearance was, kind of more on your rank. Like that, obviously, like a new enlisted or a short-term enlisted person would never be able to, or like be subject to highly classified information. So yeah, that makes sense to bump her ranking. A lot of people call it like a step promotion and whatnot, but it's pretty interesting because that part would actually be kind of true. And obviously, it's like she didn't even have to mention that there's always military personnel around. I guess it's for like people that weren't military to understand, because it's like that's just kind of the nature of the beast. If there's anything going on, there's military people literally everywhere, and you don't have to worry about that.
So I'm gonna go to page 49 where I think we already maybe gone over little bit of this already, but she completes the Ariel completes her training in English, but she asks her, "What would you like to say?" And so the alien Ariel, it's called Ariel. There you go. She says, I've been a part of the domain expeditionary force in this sector of space for several thousand years. However, I have not personally had intimate contact with beings on Earth since about 5000 BCE. It is not my primary function. Actually, I think I read through this, didn't I? She's fluent in 346 other languages. English is not one of them. Last time she was on Earth, or the last Earth language she was conversant in was the Sanskrit language of the Vedic hymns. At that time, she was a member of a mission sent to investigate the loss of a domain base that was in the Himalayan mountains. She said an entire battalion of officers, pilots, communicators, communication administrative personnel disappeared and the base destroyed. She talks about several million years, what she used to do. She talks about during the time that in the Himalayan mountains where their battalion of officers was destroyed, or when they were sent there. So this domain group was sent to Earth in the Himalayan mountains, I guess, to get information about what was going on because they suspected that okay, here it says, following the logical extension of evidence, testimony, observation, as well as the absence of certain evidence, I led my team to the discovery that there were still old Empire ships and well-hidden old Empire installations in this solar system of which we had been completely unaware. So the old Empire is what was controlling parts of the universe or galaxy or whatever, and they're controlling it in I guess not the best way, I guess, and so the domain forces have been trying to throughout several thousand years, trying to take down the old empire, basically. Um, she says to the officer, she's or the nurse. Is she an officer now? I can't remember. She says, "You and I were unable to communicate in your language because I personally have not been exposed to your language. However, now that I have scanned the books and material you provided me, this data has been relayed to our space station in this region and processed by our communications officers through our computers. It has been translated into my own language and relayed back to me in a context that I can think with. I have also received additional information from the files stored in our computers about the English language and domain records concerning Earth civilization. She is now prepared to give you certain information that I feel will be of great value to you. I will tell you the truth. Although truth is relative to all other truth, I wish to share with you it as honestly and accurately as possible." Basically, she's going to give her a history of humanity because she feels that she needs to have this history because she says that the history you guys have already is very inaccurate.
And don't we all know that?
Yeah.
It's like pretty much any kind of history class you've ever taken, it's like you can tell that like there's a lot of information left out, or like it's kind of just displayed in a way that is kind of the what is it? It promotes patriotism because everyone else, wherever you're from, it always makes it seem like everybody else is like kind of like the bad guy.
Well, and also it's just the origins of humanity and stuff is what she's talking about too. It's like a complete lie apparently, or it's not truthful. But she mentions there's a little area in here where Ariel has the nurse have an out of body experience because when she's talking to her about eternal spiritual beings, or Isbis, which she calls the soul basically of all living beings. Um, uh, the nurse doesn't quite understand because doesn't understand that humans have souls or something. I don't know. But so she makes her have an out of body experience and shows her. She's like, "Now do you understand?" And the nurse is like, and goes back in her body and has to go and like splash some water on her face or something. But so uh, she does that, and then let's see, she talks to her about the history um, and let's see, she goes into um, just sort of the makeup of where her um, sort of how the domain has been fighting the old empire. Um, let's see. As she says here, before you can understand the subject of history, you must first understand the subject of time. Time is simply an arbitrary measurement of the motion of objects through space. Space is not linear. Space is determined by the point of view of an ISB when viewing an object. The distance between an ISB and the object being viewed is called space. She talks to her about time and space and how they're very subjective. She says history is not only a linear record of events, as many authors of Earth history books imply, because it is not a string that can be stretched out and marked like a measuring tool. History is a subjective observation of the movement of objects through space, recorded from the point of view of a survivor rather than of those who succumbed. Events occur interactively and concurrently, just as the biological body as a heart and that pumps blood while the lungs. She's basically saying, yeah, it's a whole system. It's not just a linear thing. Um, Space and time is like it's a whole, like, there's a lot more to it, basically. um, she says, although time runs consecutively, events do not happen in an independent linear stream. In order to view and understand the history of reality of the past, one must view all events as part of an interactive whole. Time can also be sensed as a vibration, which is uniform throughout the entire physical universe. She says, you admit.
Yeah, it's like another way to see that is like, okay, you're living this life, and you're like, okay, so what happens next is like my kids will continue living after this, but it's like when you pass away, or you leave the physical body, it's like you're like, okay, the next time if I do reincarnate or I come back, it's gonna be in the future. But it's like what really can actually happen because all events happen all at the same time, all continuously.
Because it's only the present moment.
Yeah, it's only the
Really.
present moment. You can literally become the new present moment, like say during 5000 BC, but then that's your new timeline that you start to develop, and you think that everything is gonna happen after that. So you can, and then you can pop into like, you know, the next life at 1000 BC, and you're like, okay, it's like no, it's like they're all each one is just when it is at that given moment. They're all at the same time, but a lot of people seem to think it's like everything happens and then you pass away, then something else happens. No, it's like it all can happen. It's all happening right now, and all will be happening.
Yeah, because what you like basically what you think about is that the only thing if you open your eyes and look around you, this is what exists. Everything that's in front of you right now, the present moment, whether you're sleeping or you're at work or you're doing something else, I don't know, you're in another dimension. Like the present moment is what is, and that can be on any timeline, back, future, or past, sort of. I guess you could say. It gets complicated, doesn't it? So Ariel explains that the Isbis, those are the souls basically, souls or spirits, have been around since before the beginning of the universe. The reason they are called immortal is because the spirit is not born and cannot die, but exists in a personally postulated perception of is and will be. She was careful to explain that every spirit is not the same. Each is completely unique in identity, power, awareness, and ability. The difference between an Isbi like Ariel and most of the Isbis inhabiting bodies on Earth is that Ariel can enter and depart from her doll at will. She can perceive at selective depths through matter. So basically, she has other things that she can do. Being having a doll body is what her body is considered, a doll body, not a flesh body. Um, let's see. Very interesting stuff. She talks about the physical universe and how it's formed. She says the physical universe itself is formed from the convergence and amalgamation of many other individual universes, each one of which were created by an Isby or group of Isbys. The collision of these illusory universes commingled and coalesced and were solidified to form a mutually created universe. Because it is agreed that energy and forms can be created but not destroyed, this creative process has continued to form an ever expanding universe of nearly infinite physical proportions. I mean, so she talks about how before the formation of the physical universe, there were a vast period during which universes were not solid but wholly illusionary. Um, in every case, the magician was one or more Isbys, as far as the magician to make something new out of the universe. Um, She said many Isbys on Earth can still recall vague images from that period. Tales of magic, sorcery, and enchantment, fairy tales, and mythology speak of such things, although in very crude terms. Um, she said each Isby entered into the physical universe when they lost their own home universe. That is, when Isby's home universe was overwhelmed by the physical universe, or when the Isby joined with other Isbys to create or conquer the physical universe. On Earth, the ability to determine when an Isby entered the physical universe is difficult because the timeline. She says that the memory of the Isbys on Earth have been erased, so you can't figure out from them, and also something about invasions and whatnot. Oh, and this is an interesting part. She says sometimes she's talking about Isbys. Sometimes they will capture other Isbys as slaves. They will be forced to inhabit bodies to perform manual work, especially mining mineral ores or heavy gravity planets such as Earth. And she talks about going back to the domain. So basically, that's really interesting. Basically, she says that yeah, we've created everything, and we created stuff because we wanted to create more stuff and experiment with more things. And then our creation eventually pulled or formed into the physical universe, and so then we started inhabiting physical bodies. And then we f around with each other is what it sounds like.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like that. Uh, it's like, and then they're like, okay, so like, what can I do now? And then they're like, there's people or Isbys that want to control and like conquer and everything. Like, they want that kind of experience. And it's very interesting when you kind of look throughout perceived quote unquote history and like see like what all those different timelines and different things you've seen people along the way do. You know, the people they brought in from China that were like digging for gold in brutal conditions and all, you know, all the different time periods in which minerals or dense objects, shiny objects have been used to kind of like have people enslave each other or kill each other for
But
an item.
it gets more interesting than that. But let me talk to because you mentioned the domain force that was lost in the Himalayan mountains. So she talks about why they went there. So she says that the domain expeditionary force first entered into the Milky Way galaxy very recently, only about 10,000 years ago. Their first action was to conquer the home planets of the old empire. This is not the official name, but it's the nickname given to them. Well, so that's what she, so okay, so the old empire served as the seat of central government for this galaxy and other adjoining regions of space. So they were taking down the old empire, and they detected that part of them they were controlling this part of the galaxy. So they came, and they said they installed a base for their own forces along the path of invasion, which leads toward the center of this galaxy. So they set up the domain forces on Earth in the Himalayan mountains near the border of Pakistan and Afghanistan. They had about 3,000 members in it. They set the base up under or inside the top of a mountain. The mountain top was drilled into and made hollow to create an area large enough to house the ships and personnel of that force. An electronic illusion of the mountain top was then created to hide the base by projecting a false image from inside the mountain against a force screen. The ships could then enter and exit through the force screen, yet remain unseen by Homo sapiens. Shortly after they settled there, the base was surprised by an attack from a remnant of the military forces of the old empire. Um, so they said that unbeknownst to the domain, a hidden underground base on Mars operated by the old empire had existed for a very long time. The domain base was wiped out by the military attack from the Mars base, and the ISBs of the domain expeditionary force were captured. And they were captured, and they um, they basically did the same thing that they do with when they put new beings on Earth. So this is the process that they go through. Basically, they capture them. They were given amnesia, had their memories replaced with false pictures and hypnotic commands, and sent to Earth to inhabit biological bodies. She said they're still a part of the Earth population today, the human population on Earth today. And so part of what she's doing and other domain forces is coming back to try to, I guess, find their members. He said it's very hard to do that because they don't have their memory. Most of them don't remember where they came from and all that kind of stuff. It's like I said, it's really interesting to me. um, so so yeah, that's and then she mentioned at some point that the um later on she said that discovery was made. Oh, the discovery of the some old empire base was made when the body of the Archduke of Austria was taken over by an officer of the domain. This officer, who was stationed in the asteroid belt, was sent to Earth on a routine mission to gather reconnaissance. She said the purpose of this takeover was to use the body as a disguise through which to infiltrate human society in order to gather information about current events on Earth. She said the officer, as an ISB having greater power than the being inhabiting the body of the Archduke, simply pushed the being out of the and took over control of the body. I don't know why I find that funny, but it's just like weird. So they literally just jumped in and knocked the other ISB out and took over the body. And then she said that the officer didn't realize that there was basically a bounty on his head, and he was assassinated by someone, and the confusion of that incident allowed him to be able to be captured by the old empire. And so he was captured by the old empire after that incident and held hostage in a prison, which I think at some point he was able to escape from, and they were able to take down that prison that they had set up. Because obviously he knew where it was. He was able to somehow escape after thousands of years or something like that. But here he is.
It is pretty interesting when you think about like consciousness is being able to be pushed out and taken over, because like makes you think about some of the people that you've seen in politics or entertainment industries, how it's like they go from like one way and then they show up and they're completely different. Is it like a clone? Is it like some sort of entity that took over them? Like is it drugs? It's like you don't know, because it's like the person comes back looking different sometimes. Sometimes they look the same but they act way different. You're like, what the heck just happened to this person?
This would be the old term of possession. Right?
Yeah, possession. And when you think about that kind of thing too, it's like when people talk about exorcisms and all that other stuff, it's like, is it helping the ISB that originally had the form take it back, or is it something else? Is it, it's like a lot of different questions start to come up.
Well, there is definitely darker, lower energy ISBs or forces that can try to take over a human body and possess, right? And so in this case of exorcism, they're trying to get this lower energy being out. So let me go through real quick the process that an ISB goes through after they leave the body. So, because they found out, I guess, through this one guy's experience, the actual program that they have set up to capture ISBs here on Earth and keep them here. So it says that she says eventually the domain discovered that a wide area of space is monitored by an electronic force field which controls all the ISBs in this end of the galaxy, including Earth. The electronic force screen is designed to detect ISBs and prevent them from leaving the area. If any ISB attempts to penetrate the force screen, it captures them in a kind of electronic net. The result is that the captured ISB is subjected to a very severe brainwashing treatment which erases the memory of the ISB. This process uses a tremendous electrical shock, just like Earth psychiatrists use electric shock therapy to erase memory. and personality of a patient to make them more cooperative. On Earth, this therapy they should use only a few hundred volts, but for an ISB they use billions of volts. This tremendous shock completely wipes out all of the memory of the ISB. The memory erasure is not just for one life or one body, it wipes out all of the accumulated experiences of a nearly infinite past as well as the identity of the ISB. She says the shock is obviously to make it so that they can't remember who they are, where they came from, their knowledge or skills, their memory of the past, their ability to function as a spiritual entity. They become a mindless, robotic non entity. After the shock, a series of hypnotic suggestions are used to install false memories and a false time orientation in each ISB. This includes the command to return to the base after the body dies, so that the same kind of shock and hypnosis can be done again and again and again. She said what the domain learned from the experience of the Archduke officer has been using that the old empire has been using Earth as a prison planet for a very long time. They don't know exactly how long, but it's been millions of years. So she brings up again that they depart when the ISB dies. They depart from the body. They are detected by the force screen. They are captured in order to, by hypnotic command, to return to the light. The idea of heaven and the afterlife are a part of this hypnotic suggestion, obviously. She said they're shocked and hypnotized. Their memory is erased. They're told to report back to Earth, and basically they just go back because that's the only thing they can do. She says. So yeah, Earth is used as a prison planet, and so she says the ISBs who are sentenced to Earth by the old empire are classified as untouchable. This included anyone that the old empire judged to be criminals who are too vicious to be reformed or subdued, as well as other criminals such as sexual perverts or beings unwilling to do any productive work. An untouchable classification of ISB also includes a wide variety of political prisoners. This includes ISBs who are considered to be non-compliant freethinkers or revolutionaries who make trouble for the government of the various planets of the old empire. So she says the list of untouchables includes artists, painters, singers, musicians, writers, actors, performers of every kind. She says for this reason, Earth has more artists per capita than any other planet in the old empire. She said they include intellectuals, inventors, geniuses of almost every field. Skilled managers. She says basically anyone not willing to submit to their mindless economic, political, religious servitude as a tax-paying worker in the class system of the old empire were labeled as an untouchable and sentenced to life on Earth, eternity on Earth. Yeah, so that's kind of interesting. Is that interesting? I find that very interesting. And then I think it's somewhere she mentions that that's one reason why it's kind of interesting. There's such a wide variety of different types of people here. And it's also kind of difficult for people to really accomplish or come together, really, because you have people on both ends of the spectrum. You have criminals and people that don't care about anyone who really just want to, like, kill people and whatever. And then you have intellectuals and artists and that kind of thing. It's like, so because of the wide variety, which is not normal, not usual, it's just interesting. But that's a reason for that, is what they say.
Yeah, that is pretty interesting because it's like everyone can see all the different varieties of people that are here.
And then, of course, you say, well, of course, there's variety in everybody. But then when you think about it from this standpoint, I feel like it makes it more interesting. Yeah. It's like, okay, it's just an interesting viewpoint of it, I guess.
Yeah, it is. It's like you have, like, the spectrums that we all think are the norm. It's like, that's just because that is what's a norm here. That's what was created. Like, that's what was brought here. Yeah, it's very fascinating. Anything you'd like to add on this one before we wrap this one up? Because we have a little bit of a problem.
A little bit of a problem. Hear babies in the background. I think that's probably good for now. But basically, I think people get the Oh, here. So yeah, she says, and the very unusual combination of inmates on Earth, criminals, perverts, artists, revolutionaries, and geniuses, is the cause of a very relative and tumultuous environment. So the purpose of the prison planet is to keep Isbys on Earth forever, promoting ignorance, superstition, and war between Isbys helps to keep the prison population crippled and trapped behind the wall. Um, but yeah, so it's quite interesting stuff.
Very interesting stuff. And we'll go ahead and wrap this one up and revisit it again at another time.
Sounds good.
All right.